Okay, there's some long-term work that we're going to do with this novel that's a little bit different maybe than anything you guys have ever done. It's an idea that I came upon last year, and then because of the COVID in the spring, we weren't able to complete the idea. But the notion is something called a recursion. And where it's going to lead us is I would like us to be able to publish as a group or as a group of students a book. And we're going to do this through Amazon. It'll be something that should be available for all of you to download for free. But it'll be something that you can claim that you are a published author. And so the book is going to center around Frankenstein. It's going to center around an exercise we call recursion. So this is all something that we'll be working on throughout the course of at least this 9 weeks, probably into the final 9 weeks as well. Now, as a story, we talked about how Frankenstein has been done and redone as a film. Recursion idea is a little bit different, and I think you'll see what I mean when I start to go through it. So to begin with, let's think of what exactly a recursion is. First of all, it's not a term that we typically use in language arts. It's a term that comes from computer science and computer programming. And the general idea behind it is that when you have a large program to write or a tool to do or a problem to solve, sometimes it's too massive just to undertake and try to think of all the possibilities of doing it. Sometimes the solution to the problem is better by breaking the problem into smaller versions of the same problem and then piecing those together, those smaller versions. So the solution to the bigger problem can be built up by smaller problems. So here's an example of how that works. Let's suppose you're a computer programmer and your boss has asked you to program a robot that can dribble a basketball down a court. So you think about it and you realize, wow, if I'm dribbling a basketball, that's a long task to complete. But in a sense, it's a very repetitious task. The program should be doing the same set of loops over and over again. So if I can just write the first basic loop, I can repeat that process. I can break this large problem into smaller ones, and then deal with issues like turning, stopping, pivoting, passing, as small problems rather than one large problem to think of. And that's the notion that we're going to work on behind this recursion of Frankenstein. All right, so this is a task you're going to work with a partner, possibly 2 people. We might have a group of 3, and that would be fine. But basically, we're going to take this work chapter by chapter, and each group will be assigned a certain set of chapters, not the entire book to work. But what you're going to be doing is going into the original text and pulling out pieces of that text, reframing that text into a poetic form. And so what we're going to wind up with is we're going to stitch together, much like Victor's creature, our own poetic recreation or recursion of the original novel. So I'll take you through an example. So if we started with the first letter that Victor writes to Margaret Seville, not Victor, Walton writes to Margaret Seville, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a document. Okay, I'm working with the first letter. I'm going to notice that letter is broken into paragraphs, and those paragraphs are numbered. So I'm going to create a document that has 3 columns. It's going to have basically a chart with 3 columns, actually 4 columns. The very first column will be the paragraph number. The second column, what I'm going to do in that, and that's probably a good chunk of the work, is I want you to take each paragraph. So each chapter, you'll take one paragraph at a time. And in that paragraph, no matter how long it is or short it is, I want you to pull out one sentence, at most 2, that you think represent like the key sentence or key idea within that paragraph. Okay, so you can see what I've done in this example is I've taken the letters and then I've taken one sentence from each of the paragraphs. Okay, paragraph 1, I pulled this sentence. Paragraph 2, I pulled this sentence. 3, and so on until you get to the total of 8 paragraphs within this first chapter, I guess, first letter. All right. Then the next topic is I want you to take a look at what you've written, okay, or what you've copied and pasted, that single sentence. And then I want you to cut it down to its bare minimal. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a look at that and you're going to highlight or boldface what stands out to you as the most relevant, most important group of words. Now, sometimes that'll be the entire sentence. More likely, it'll be a couple of words, maybe 3 or 4 at most, that come together. So in this first example, it says, the original sentence, "You will rejoice to hear that no disaster has accompanied the commencement of an enterprise which you have regarded with such evil forebodings." So in all of this, the term evil forebodings is what stood out to me. So that's what I'm going to highlight. That's what I'm going to pull out. Okay. And you'll see what I do with that is I'm going to place it in my column. Okay. So evil forebodings goes here. My second paragraph, I pulled out 4 words. Satiate my ardent curiosity there. And you can see sometimes it's long, sometimes it's short, sometimes it's a single word. Okay. Now, let's look at an example of this going through the full process. Now, as I move closer to the end product, you'll notice what I've done is I've removed the columns, which we'll talk about later. Don't worry about that right now. But you'll see that I've got the one single sentence, maybe 2, from each of the paragraphs. Okay. My next column is what's beginning to form as a paragraph poem. I've taken those key words, evil forebodings, satiate my ardent curiosity, my education was neglected, yet I was passionate, 6 years passed, I preferred glory to wealth. I've stripped away all the extras and tried to get just to the bare essence of the sentence most important in that paragraph. And then my last and final step is I'm going to take this and I'm going to recreate it into a poem, a final draft, where I'm going to cut it even further. So you'll see some stuff I keep, like I like just these 2 words. Some stuff I will delete, satiate my ardent curiosity. I dropped the word ardent to satiate my curiosity. My education was neglected, yet I was passionate. I reworded, I like passionate and education, passionate, not educated. So I made a change there. I kept the tenor or the meaning here, but I just reworded it. So what I'm working on is I'm crafting a short poem of an entire chapter. And then the end result, by the time we get ready to publish this thing, you'll see that we may have several poetic versions of letter 1. And then you see what I've done here is I've parsed it down, I've reworked it, I've worked with other people to kind of make this happen, but basically I've taken the first chapter, which would be letter 1, and I've created a poem from it. I've taken the second letter, which would be chapter 2, and I've created a poem from it. I'm going to pick a picture that I think is appropriate to illustrate kind of the theme or the tone of what the poems are trying to do. And this would appear as a page within our book that we're going to publish. So we are retelling this novel, okay, in a recursive poem. So it's going to take a little bit of work. Our first task is going to be to practice this, of course, to make sure we have it down. So what we're going to do in these initial couple of days is practice with the letters and practice pulling things out, practice writing our poem, and then we'll start real briefly with maybe chapter 1 or 2. By the end of the day, what we'll get within a class might be 2 or 3 people that are giving versions of chapter 1, 2 or 3 people that give versions of chapter 2, all the way through the 24 chapters. You will not be writing all of it yourself. This is a collaborative effort.